Hey guys, thanks for checking out the show today. My guests today are Tre Packard and Akira Biondo. Tre and Akira run an organization called PangeaSeed Foundation. Tre is a renowned public art curator. He's an award-winning environmental photographer. He's focused on art and activism. And Akira is the director of operations there at the foundation, and she's the co-founder of their program that they call Seawalls, which is an Artists for Oceans program. But PangeaSeed Foundation is a globally engaged nonprofit organization acting at the intersection of culture and environmentalism to further the conservation of our oceans. All of us rely on oceans, no matter where you live. If you live in a landlocked area, you rely on the oceans. Trust me. Their mission, though, is to inspire ocean stewardship and action through science, education, and artivism. They call it their SEA or SEA program. And that really is at the heart of it. This idea of artivism, using art, fine art. They're working with artists all over the world, working with different cities, municipalities, and they put up these beautiful murals to tell the story of, species in crisis or, the climate crisis, ocean conservation, etc. And it's just amazing work that they're doing with a really small team. So my hope is that it inspires you to get out there and be a part of the solution. And they're always, just like we are here at the Underswell, focused on educating their constituents, their stakeholders, their donors, and their artists. But through their groundbreaking Seawalls Artists for Oceans public art program, PangeaSeed Foundation has created over 500 educational ocean advocacy murals in 19 countries. You're going to hear them talk about that experience. They are bringing the ocean into streets across the globe. So I'll put all the links to all their work and all their social assets here in the show notes. You can read more about Tre and Akira, husband and wife duo running the organization, PangeaSeed Foundation. Be sure to check them out. But for now, I hope you enjoy the conversation. Leave your comments and questions for us if you've got any for them. But just go support these guys. They're doing amazing work. And if you know any donors or anybody who supports work like this, I'd love for you to send them their way, because PangeaSeed Foundation deserves it. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you enjoy the conversation with Tre and Akira. Welcome to Good Things Happening, the show that explores the sustainability progress that's being made just under the surface at your favorite brand or company. I'm your host, Derek Sabori, and these are the people making it happen. All right. Well, here we are, you guys. How's it going? You guys look great out there.
Good.
Hey, how are you, Derek?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. So nice to see you. I wish I was there on island with you so we could be doing this in person. That would be much better.
We can do the part 2 out here sometime.
We'll do the follow-up. We're going to give, we'll leave some things hanging so that we have an excuse for me to get out there. Where are you guys at? We'll tell everybody, what island are you guys on? What's it like out there where you guys are at right now?
Yeah, we're based on the big island of Hawaii Island. We've been in Hawaii now for, going on 11 years? Or did we just cross 11?
Yeah, we're going on to 11
Going on
years
11 years out here now.
Point, yeah.
And yeah, we absolutely love it. Like, Big Island is just I think it's the most adventurous of all the islands, the most diverse, one of the most beautiful in my personal opinion. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, we used to live on Oahu for 5 years before moving here several years ago, and this island is much more alive. I mean, it's growing as we speak. There's active lava flows, and it's very special, like no other place on earth, I think. And today is a beautiful day. It started off a bit rainy and overcast, and the sun's come out now, so that's always nice.
Well, at least you guys have sun here in Southern California, where I'm at, Costa Mesa. It has been gloomy and Seattle-ish for months and months. So I'm waiting for the sun to come out. You guys, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited because I've known you guys for a long time, and what I want to do is dive in. We're going to talk about that, talk about some of the backstory. As I was diving in and looking into this to prepare for today, I was reminded that I think we first met in person at the Great West Coast Migration 2012. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
that is a blast from the past, but yes, that does sound right.
So 2012, maybe take us back a little bit because, I mean, one, you guys have you reached your 10-year anniversary. We're getting ready to celebrate World Oceans Week. So there's a lot going on for you guys. But I do want to let's rewind the clock a little bit, and because let's talk about your journey, how it started. Because when we first found you, it was around sharks, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how your personal journey has evolved, how the organization has evolved, and how did PangeaSeed Foundation come about? Take us back to 2012.
We should get into a PangeaSeed time machine, and you can start off with how it all started.
Let's do it.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm the founder and executive director of PangeaSeed Foundation. I started it back in 2010 while I was living in Japan. And my background around that time was environmental documentation. And I'd been documenting ports all around Asia and leading other documentarians into the location to get footage. And then that was used for different environmental campaigns, just news in general regarding overfishing and endangered marine life. And in I think it was 2009, I uncovered the largest industrial shark finning operation in Asia, which was placed in an area called Kesanuma in northern Japan. And at that point, I'd been doing this for several years, and the day-to-day, I guess, kind of dealing with death and destruction was weighing pretty heavy on me at that point. And as a foreigner in a foreign country, I wanted to be able to connect with people on a different level that, hopefully created, inspiration and action around, what's happening to our oceans. And going back even further, as a kid, I think most boys particularly are kind of into sharks or dinosaurs. And I was always into sharks, and I never grew out of that. And throughout my lifetime, I got scuba certified at a young age and been diving around the world and seeking out locations. And these locations that I was going to, I was starting to realize that, they were overfished and they were polluted, and there were major issues that are happening to these areas that were once pristine and abundant. And so, documenting that death and destruction of what was happening to the oceans, it's important to let people know what's happening around the realities of these issues. But at the same time, I want to give people hope. And I grew up in a family full of artists, and we were always, encouraged to use creativity to problem solve. So I put together an art event in 2010 that focused on shark conservation. And right around that time as well, I was looking at conservation in general, and this is a good, 13 years ago, but it was either kind of conservative or militant, and it didn't really resonate with what I was interested in, and how I felt I could engage with people around this issue. So I incorporated, elements that I'm really interested in, like art and music and film and discussion and so on. And I held this event that was a big success in terms of, I guess, the scale of what I put together around that time. And it was kind of a light bulb moment that, hey, people do react to, these issues, but in ways that we can all kind of identify with, like film and music and photography and art and so on. So yeah, that was a light bulb moment. And from there, I started tinkering, with an idea of an organization and building out kind of what that could potentially look like. And it started turning into kind of an annual event. So we did it in 2010 and then 2011. And we got asked to do another one in 2011 in the US. So it just started growing. And it was kind of okay, we could either, keep this as a passion project or really just go for it and put all of our time and energy and, really, chase our passion, so to speak. And I met Akira around that time frame as well, around, I think, 2011. And we started working closely together and just, full transparency for the listeners and everything. We're married now. We just had our 10-year anniversary last year. And yeah,
congratulations.
So, Thank you.
Quick question on that. Did you guys meet on the job? It was work related?
Yeah, it was work related.
So essentially, kind of my side of finding PangeaSeed was that I'm originally from Switzerland. I was born and raised in Basel, and so definitely landlocked, no ocean anywhere nearby. But I did grow up also within a family of creatives. My dad's a photographer. My mom's been a designer, a creator, a producer of all sorts. And I had this kind of environmental passion instilled in me by my godmother, who had gotten me a membership to WWF when I was 4 years old or so. And so I had always, struggled to kind of figure out how I'm going to merge those two things, my kind of creative upbringing and then my interest for environmentalism. And I moved to Japan in 2010 and was looking to volunteer with an organization that was doing something within the space of shark conservation specifically, because I had been doing that sort of work in Europe at the time. And so, got on Google and found this thing called PangeaSeed, which at the time and still to this day was the only other organization out there doing anything about sharks. There was plenty in Japan
Yeah.
Specifically. And, there was in Japan in general, marine conservation is a bit of a touchy subject. A lot of the work there has been done by foreign organizations, mostly telling Japanese people not to pursue certain cultural practices. Some of them are very problematic. And so to find that there was an organization out there and the only organization at it that was approaching it from this creative way was just really something that was new to me and, this perfect match. And yeah, I guess the rest is history.
The rest is history. And I mean, such humble beginnings. I love it. Both of you guys were same-minded, on the right track, on the same track, thinking of sharks, but it's evolved from just sharks, I would think, right? I mean, of course, as important as they are to the ecosystem and to our global health, but now you guys have this global approach, this global footprint. You're working with teams and artists all over the world. And maybe we can touch on that and tell us how things have evolved since then, because with your approach, you call it SEA or SEA, Science, Education, and Artivism. So you've taken it all and you've expanded on it. And we're talking about sustainability and taking that approach, right? Explain or talk to us a little bit about that science, education, artivism approach. How have things evolved since those early days?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, as you said, when we first met, that was back in 2012 during the Great West Coast Migration, which was this massive art tour that we organized, all still shark focused. We started up in Seattle, made our way all the way down to San Diego. We met you in Costa Mesa.
I think there were like 6 or 7 stops over the course of like 2 months.
And so it was really
Pop-up
ambitious.
events.
I don't think we'd be able to survive anything like it these days.
Yeah.
We were traveling in this Sprinter van packed with like 150 original artworks by artists from all over the world, all highlighting the plight of sharks. And we would have these weekend installments at these art galleries along the coast.
I just wanted to mention, Alf, what Akira was saying there. As a small organization, we were able to gather, over 150 artists to donate artwork to be part of this, to raise awareness and funds for more projects moving forward. And I think like that really shows the power of sharks and how they resonate with people. Like I always say, for me, sharks were the gateway drugs to loving the oceans. And through that, like we realize, over time that, sharks are, in a very important species. They're an apex predator. They've balanced the oceans for, millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, but they're being wiped out on a mass level. It's estimated that between 70 to 100 million sharks are killed every year for the shark fin trade, mainly for soup and medicinal purposes in Asia. But yeah, again, for us, sharks were kind of this gateway drug to learning about all these other issues that are important, that are happening to the oceans. So it's a bit of a perfect storm of all these different things that are happening all at once. And yeah, we can get into like how we developed the SEA approach kind of around that.
Yeah, so we kind of really found that it was important to start focusing on more than just sharks. As Tre said, they're an indicator species. They're kind of like the tip of the iceberg, right? So at the point where sharks disappear from an ecosystem, you start seeing other things that are kind of out of whack. They will prey on the sick and diseased fish. They really keep a marine ecosystem in balance. But an ecosystem really doesn't just depend on sharks, but there's so much more like pollution, overfishing, all the climate related impacts such as acidification and the warming of the ocean. And so we've kind of made a conscious decision to expand our scope and not just be the shark organization. And what we really wanted to hone in on is what is it that makes PangeaSeed unique? And clearly that is our using art as this medium for communication. But it's not just art for art's sake. What we're really trying to do is inspire ocean stewardship and action. And we want to do that through science-based fact, educate people, and that education comes in the form of art. So that's really what we're all about. Those are kind of the 3 core pillars that guide everything we do.
I was just going to add that, the education component is something that's near and dear to my heart, because what we find too is that the more people know, the more they'll do, right? And just people typically they're just not aware. I feel like sometimes we're in a lucky position because we've been studying it for so long, or you were exposed to it so early, or it's been something you've done. So it becomes second nature, sort of like, well, yeah, of course, ecosystems, sharks, apex predator, but there's so much work to do to inform people, right? Is that how much of your effort is spent? How do you distribute among those between science, education, and artivism? Equally distributed, or does one of those weigh more heavily than the other?
I think it's a day-to-day approach, whatever feels most pressing or important on that day, that's what we focus on. But we try to give all three, the love that they deserve.
I also feel like it's almost like an ice cream sandwich, or like a sandwich in general, where you've got like all of the elements and every bit of information that we share. We're not going to go and, approach a scientific finding in this very dry, only data-based way, but rather we're going to go and find an image that is compelling enough to make people stop scrolling, right? And start reading and be educated. So it's really kind of like putting these morsels of information together when it comes to digital content. And then when we work in the streets, I'm sure we'll be getting into our Seawalls Artists for Oceans program. But then again, we kind of supply the artists with the science-based information, educate them in the first place. So
yeah, because they're spokespeople for what we do as an organization. They can be the
advocate, and then they're going to go on to create an artwork that in turn educates the viewer as well.
And some of that education, I know from experience, comes with just that, with experience, right? Getting artists into the water, under the water. Both you guys are certified scuba divers, long time. You spend time with the artist a lot of times underwater and out of water, talking to them, explaining, but also just really showing them what's going on, what they're about to paint, right? To help them with their message.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's been a personal approach as well. Is like, I felt that, it's a small portion of the population that has the opportunity to put on a mask and see what's beneath the waves, So what better way than to get an artist kind of like, fueled up to create a piece that's going to advocate for one of these issues than by getting them in that environment. Yeah, since the beginning of the organization, that's something that we've been focused on, are those opportunities to get people into the water and experience endangered marine life or habitat, help out with citizen science, learn a little bit more, because that has a direct impact. That's, I think, where you really create, a bigger change.
I think, like the root of, both of us as well as other kind of founding volunteers back in the day was our personal experiences that we had, whether that was
relying on what we know.
Yeah.
And what we're passionate about.
What we like, whether that was like the beauty that we experienced while diving or witnessing just the atrocities. It was that personal experience that really sticks with you. Say whether that was, witnessing firsthand just like the magnificent diversity of the ocean, or something that was just so atrocious that it really stuck with us. It's those experiences that inform what we become passionate about. And I think information in the form of a textbook, a study, a news story can only go so far. And so what we do through our projects is try to get our artists in the field before any brush touches the wall. We've taken artists out who've never been in the ocean before.
Yeah, put them right in the water with like, whale sharks or manta rays.
As well.
Yeah. And it's a transformative experience. Like we've seen so many of these artists that we've, had the opportunity to give them this experience, go on and completely change their practice and focus on, more sustainable kind of like messaging and efforts. So yeah, it's that power of, experience, I think, that can really, be radical.
And I think, like the reason we use art as kind of our favorite medium is because it can elicit emotions, right? And so if we want to maximize that emotion eliciting power of art, we need the artists themselves to really be invested as well. And some artists come to us already having that personal connection, being scuba divers themselves, but I would say the majority are not ocean people.
Yeah.
So that is really also what we try to do, is not preach to the choir, right? There's enough of that going on, but kind of broadening this tent of people who are ocean advocates.
Well, if you're listening, if you're watching, I would urge you guys, our audience, to go check out PangeaSeed's website. Look at the large, large body of work that you guys have done when it comes to your artists, the global footprint. So I think before we dive too deep into all of the details, I do want to maybe talk about the progress that you've made, and what are kind of the programs that you have in place. How did you get to building that small little organization in Japan to now being this global organization that is working with towns and municipalities all over the world, building murals all over the world? Akira, you mentioned the Seawalls program. So maybe take us through a couple of the milestones that you've reached, and what have been the sort of the major events through the life of PangeaSeed.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Where do we start with that, right?
Walk down memory lane.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, we were completely green, when we started this organization. And I think, for the type of, I guess, nonprofit that we built, there's not necessarily a blueprint. There was nobody like us before then, and there's really nobody like us now. So it's been a lot of like trial and error, building relationships, and seeking counsel with people that maybe have gone through like similar types of growing pains. Those things have really helped. And I think a lot of it has been the communication between the two of us, and trusting each other and calling each other on our bullshit, and being able to, I guess, put our values and what we're aiming to achieve, in the forefront. When we moved back to the States in 2012, we incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit because we wanted to do this the right way. That was a completely new animal on its own, that whole process. And then we built out a board of directors, which we're happy to say Derek has been on since the very beginning. Super exciting.
Full disclosure. Thank you very much. It's been a great ride.
Yeah. And then from there, we started building out program areas.
Yeah, I think, to kind of add on to what all the things that Tre said as kind of like the foundational ingredients, I would say it's been to not grow too fast and not to grow too big.
Which is challenging in today's environment. Like every time you look online, you get kind of FOMO, and it's just like, oh, I need to be doing more. I need to be doing more. But yeah.
And I think, it really started off with that decision to do more than just sharks. I think that probably came in around 2013, 14, around there. And also one of the very early light bulb moments of like the very first, what we now call seawall being painted, which was in Sri Lanka. Our dear friend and kind of like founding member, Aaron Glasson, he was at the time living in Sri Lanka, and where a ton of manta rays get over-harvested specifically for their gill rakers. They're used in kind of pseudo-traditional medicine. And despite the language barriers that existed between the fishermen targeting these animals for, their just really bare necessities, right, for their livelihoods, the imagery that they created really started conversations. And so we're like, you know what, I think it's time that we bring this art into the public space. And so, what we really wanted to do, and kind of how we started rethinking the way we do our work, is how can we maximize the amount of people that see the artwork? How can we democratize it? And meet people where they are at, rather than trying to get people into spaces like galleries.
Yeah, I think, before this moment, we were operating kind of in gallery spaces and, bringing together people, I guess, kind of like in an indoor space. And I think the issue with galleries, it's like, it's a great opportunity, but not everybody's going to walk in off the street to experience a gallery, So we just saw an incredible opportunity that wasn't necessarily being filled, where we could take this artwork, blow it up large scale, and be a total disruptor. You're going into, people's neighborhoods and communities and creating these large scale, artworks that address these, pressing ocean environmental issues. And like, what better way to engage people than through public art? And like, I grew up in Southern California and kind of grew up in a community, and my interests were, like street art and, surfing and skating and that whole thing. And like, I think a big communication tool for that generation was, art in general, illustration and so on. So just kind of relying on, what we had interests in and like what you could do with it and how you could push those mediums. And so we created this first large scale mural, and the conversations that it started were kind of a light bulb moment for us, where we were like, we can step outside of the gallery. We can take this into the streets. And that's kind of like I guess the term that we use is like, we take the oceans into the streets.
And since then, I mean, how many murals to this point? How many
Oh man.
seawalls activations? How many murals? And some of them are massive. I mean, these are really big
Yeah.
pieces of work, right? What are
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
your most
Absolutely.
memorable ones that you guys have stuck in your minds the most?
Oh, geez. Well, like for the track record, like we're really stoked that earlier this year, like on our first Seawalls project for 2023, we crossed the 500 mural mark. So we've created over 500 murals in 19 countries with the support of over like 350 artists from around the world.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an incredible track record looking back at it in retrospect. For something that just started as kind of like a random idea that we tried out, and we're a small team internally, so like all of our attention really went into that program. And after we did that first mural in Sri Lanka, we went internally and kind of like workshop the idea of like what we could do with this. And we came up with this kind of like concept of bringing multiple artists together from different disciplines in a specific location to address a specific issue. And from there, that was in 2014, and Isla Mujeres in Mexico.
Yeah, that was the very first kind
That
of
was the first
Seawalls
one.
activation, as we call them.
Yep.
We brought about 15 or so artists together onto this tiny little island. It's home to the world's largest aggregation of whale sharks. And so we thought, why not bring these artists from all over the world together to pay tribute to the importance of these animals, both whale sharks and manta rays. And so we set the bar really high when it came to like artist
experience,
like immersive experiences, because all of these artists got to spend 2 full days on the water swimming with the biggest fish in the ocean.
Oh, so their expectations now are like, oh, you guys got to do this. They told all their friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Word spread quick. So like we got lucky, I guess, from that respect that we incorporated elements into this project that we wanted people to experience, that we were passionate about, and it resonated really well. And then like you said, they took it back out into the world, and it kind of reverberated pretty quick. And then from there, it was just it's been nonstop ever since.
Yeah, so
with that project.
Since we've done, to really reach all like far corners of the world, but also tell these really interesting stories that are left untold. We as part of that, we've ended up in just the craziest locations. We've gone to like the polar bear capital of the world in Churchill, Manitoba. It's in the subarctic. Speaking of crazy immersive experiences, like every artist had to have like a bear guard.
They had to go through polar bear training. Yeah, and what to do in case of an attack, and yeah.
Were they? I'm sure they were like, "Hey, I signed up for sharks, not dealing with polar bears, right? Two different predators."
Exactly. Yeah, no, but it's been amazing. So we've gone, as I said, to the subarctic, to the South Pacific. We've held multiple projects in New Zealand. Mexico has continued to be really close to our hearts. We've gone back there all over Mexico several times.
Yeah, the Great Barrier Reef, the Coral Triangle, and kind of everywhere in between. So, and this year we're marking a couple of big projects with our first one in Africa.
Wow. And I know as you guys were building the Seawalls campaign and doing all of these, there was a time too when you were doing expeditions. My family went on one where we went whale shark diving with you, which was amazing. One of the best times of our life for sure. What was that like? Bringing people, just some of your audience, building. Anybody could go on those, right? They signed up. You were doing whale shark, blue whale diving,
humpback whales.
Yeah. It was an extension of what we were passionate about, and this opportunity to get people in the water to learn about the conservation efforts that are happening in these locations, to experience these animals in a sustainable way. And yeah, I mean they were fantastic events that we were doing them annually up until the pandemic hit. So yeah.
It was a means to get donors out to experience these animals from a first kind of person perspective. It was a way for us to raise funds for the organization that would then fund projects like Seawalls. And it also kind of, kept us connected to why we started this in the first place, right? I think I would imagine that this goes for many activists in general. You start becoming oddly disconnected from the source of your inspiration because you get so just kind of buried in the work that you need to do. And so I think those were really important opportunities for us to just kind of go back to our roots and be like, oh, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and then having those experiences with individuals that are having those experiences for the first time, like I don't know, there's something so unique and beautiful about that experience, and putting somebody in the water for the first time with a humpback whale, and seeing them come out of the water just full of tears.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so transformative.
I was gonna add to that and say that being there, that I remember that first time underwater, and you're just sort of waiting, right? You're just out. I remember being on the boat, looking 360 all the way around. You can't see anything, so you're out literally in the middle of the ocean.
Middle of the ocean.
And you just wait. You're waiting for that first whale shark to come up, and when they just sort of come up out of the deep blue, there's nothing like that. That first experience, I will never ever
totally
forget
agree.
that.
This friend of ours, she was working in the film industry, had this fear of being underwater, but wanted to kind of punch through that. Eventually got scuba certified while she was with us in Mexico. And since then, her career has just kind of catapulted into her being like a specialist for underwater film productions, And so,
Wow.
and that has been all partly informed by wanting to seek out these experiences and learn more about what's kind of beneath the waves. So yeah, it's slightly disconnected perhaps from the Artivism work, but it keeps us rooted in what's important to us.
Well, I'd love to kind of touch on that and launch off of that, because you said, you haven't done those since the pandemic, and you've kind of focused on, you've done all of these seawalls campaigns. I know you're kind of moving into another, kind of another chapter here as you turn the corner on 10 years. What have been though some of the struggles? What I like to do is just kind of dive under the surface here, no pun intended, but give a little sense of what has it taken? You guys are a small team, a small but mighty team, of just two, added one, three. There's three of you now, plus your advisors, board of directors. But what have been some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced as a small nonprofit organization, having a really big impact, I think, on the world? But let's talk about challenges. What else has there been?
Yeah, I think like again, on the surface, we've never promoted the organization under like one face or one individual. It's always been kind of a movement. So when people do kind of get a look behind the curtain, they're like, whoa, it's just a handful of you guys, pushing the needle with all these efforts, that, yeah, it's quite surprising. So as you were saying, we're small internally with like our full-time team, but we've got this incredible network of, artists and change makers and, just individuals all around the world that we can kind of call on when we need that support. It's kind of like an Avengers team. So it's quite special, and again, I think that shows the power of art, and then also people's connections with the ocean. I think in a lot of people's lives, they don't have the opportunity to kind of like express that, and this has been a great funnel, for people to kind of like share their passion about the oceans.
Yeah, I would say, people power, the lack thereof, is one major challenge that we faced. And that is directly connected to just this constant grind of having to find funding. And, what I'm constantly amazed about is the amount of work that we've been able to complete on just shoestring budgets, relying so much on people's just extreme generosity with their skills, their time, their dedication, their friendship. Because
there's a lot of unsung heroes behind the scenes.
For the longest time, these seawalls projects that are really intensive, right? Like we've spent like a year and a half, 2 years planning for each of these projects, because you've got the art element, and then we've really made it a point to try to raise as much as possible, like upwards of 80% of our funding for each project in or around that location that the project's taking place in. So we're not just like a foreign, organization dumping foreign funding into a community.
Yeah, we've really focused on like creating a legacy for each project that we do. Because we kind of attribute it to like the circus coming to town with all this color and energy, but once we're gone, it's important that we're able to cultivate relationships with team members and different individuals that were part of the project, so they kind of carry on the legacy once we're gone with the project.
And it's unfortunately, doing that is really inefficient by design. We kind of like start over at square one every time we go into a community.
And we're working on a global stage. So,
Yeah,
we're dealing with culture, we're dealing with government, we're dealing with so many like challenging aspects to, push these projects
and every
across the finish
location,
line.
every culture, every community has its own quirks. So there's that to navigate. Although I feel like that has been maybe less of a challenge. I feel like we're quite well adapted to do that. I think we're, have approached everything with an open mind, so we don't go and try to put our expectations of maybe how we would do things in terms of how a project advances. But I think one of the main challenges being the funding, and then being relying so much on volunteer power is something that's been perhaps a hindrance. But also what has built a genuine organic community. I think about just the blood, sweat, and tears that our team, our like core Seawalls team has dedicated over the years, and they keep coming back, right? So it's like they must be gaining something out of this. Same
Yeah.
with the artists. We've had artists who they come back to us and say, hey, do you have a project coming up that I can contribute to? And for the majority of these years, we were simply unable to provide any sort of compensation to the artists. We would make sure that their travel, their food, their supplies, all of that was covered, but they weren't getting actually compensated as artists. And that's certainly something that that we have actively worked on changing, which we're really proud of. But it makes me think that we've really created something that people really genuinely love, and they gain something from it that's just so kind of personal to them, that they are willing to take 2 weeks out of their lives to come and just paint for a purpose.
What's the challenge? I guess, I mean, that makes good sense. And I think that's a good takeaway for other nonprofit founders, people who are building organizations or trying to build a movement, is creating that value and that sense of community, people, getting people to come back. Akira, I think when we were, prepping for this in our conversation, you were talking about the challenge of people feeling like ocean conservation, sustainability, climate action, these are nice to haves, especially art, especially these are nice to haves, but not always truly valued. How do you keep that machine going and constantly, how do you keep the energy to continue to tell your story, continue to fundraise? How do you keep up what drives you guys? And how do you stay creative on that so it doesn't feel like you're just constantly knocking on doors? Or is that all it is? It's just constantly knocking on doors?
It's a mix for sure. I mean, we've been able to develop some, fantastic relationships with partners, organizations, individual donors that, have been with us for years. And, a lot of it, as well as building new relationships. So, introducing the organization and, going through those motions again. But it ebbs and flows. I mean, some days are heavier than others. Some days, you walk away, feeling like you accomplished quite a bit. Other days, it's like you took 3 steps back. So, for me personally, I guess in terms of like staying motivated, it's a lot of communicating with Akira, making sure that we're both kind of in, good, I guess good kind of like frames of mind, kind of problem solving, just communication, I think is a big part of that. So, because I'm the type of individual where I can be my own worst enemy. I can get in my head pretty badly. So I have to be careful about that. So, having a partner that I can kind of like not necessarily dump on, but share how my day went, and what I'm feeling frustrated about, and things that I'm,
Commiserate with.
things that I'm interested to do or excited about. So it's good to have a sounding board, So yeah, and I think we kind of like serve that purpose for each other.
I think, from like that fundraising perspective, and then also the fact that the majority of people don't think about environmental work or arts work as essential. And sure,
Or
perhaps
there's a very
it's,
specific type of like mindset of what a nonprofit should be,
yeah, and I suppose, like when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, yes, I think, food and shelter are more important to everyone than to think about a piece of artwork and what it communicates about our connection to the environment. Sure, I think everyone can agree on that. And then I think nonprofit work in general is quite ungratifying. I think there's a lot of people who are doing so much important work for very little in return, and they're very much underappreciated. And then I think you kind of combine that with trying to break the mold of what a traditional nonprofit is, and then it makes it even harder. So, and then on top of that, I would say that we would both agree that like we don't like asking people for money. So we've definitely chosen the wrong industry to be in, which has led to us kind of just like, having to innovate, right? Kind of in order for us to kind of stay outside of stay inside our comfort zone of not having to just like purely ask people for money. We've developed other ways of fundraising. So one of our ways is through our Printed Oceans program since 2012. Mm-hmm. We've been releasing regular fine art print editions that feature endangered marine animals, habitats, topics. And it's a way for our network to support the organization, but get something in return that keeps on giving. So, they can purchase a piece of artwork. A portion of that supports the artist's livelihood. A portion of that supports the organization's work. They hang it up in their office, in their home, in their classroom. It starts and continues the conversation about what that artwork was about. And so that is one of the ways that we've kind of innovated around. And that has been, surprisingly, I suppose, really successul over the past decade.
So it takes some thinking out of the box. And I think for you guys, one thing I think it's important for the audience to understand is that when we're talking about art, the art that you guys are curating, this isn't like t-shirt graphics. Like, this is fine art. I mean, this is the artists that you guys have brought together, the community, the artwork that you guys put out there for the prints program, what's on your website, what's in social media, what goes up on these seawalls is amazing. I mean, this is beautiful, beautiful art. How is that? I mean, that's almost like an Avenger superpower, Tre, like you said. How do you guys go about finding your artists and choosing what goes into print? And is it just, who makes the call there? And is that just a natural talent that you guys have developed?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely like it's a work in progress, of course. Like my background, like I've been collecting art since I was a kid. Like I love art prints, I love originals and different things like that. So yeah, like when we first started the organization, I was basically reaching out to artists that I was either collecting or admired, and it was just shots in the dark to see if anybody would respond. And luckily enough, they did. And over time, we've been able to work with artists that are on the forefront of like the contemporary movement. Some of the biggest names in the world that have supported our efforts. So I think having that clout has really helped us to be able to approach other artists to say, hey, we're working with artists of all different backgrounds and skill sets, and everybody's bringing something unique to the table. I've always kind of come at it from the lens of like, if it's interesting to me, hopefully it's going to be interesting to other people. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, like I think at the end of the day, there's definitely a level of quality there in terms of what we're curating. And that's something that we're incredibly proud of. Through the Printed Oceans program, we've done like over 350 editions, with different artists. Through the Seawalls program, we've done over 500 murals with different artists. And yeah, like for me, that's something that inspires me and kind of like keeps gas in the tank, is like working with new artists and seeing what they're bringing to the table. And it's always something that has inspired me.
And I think that there's also something to mention here around, yes, there's these kind of like these superstar artists that have contributed their time and skill and their audience to our cause. But at the same time, especially when we work on our Seawalls projects, we make sure that it's not just visiting artists, but we try to make a really nice, even mix of local and visiting artists, and the visiting artists being, from elsewhere in that country, as well as international artists coming together to create this culture of skills exchange, cultural exchange, and making sure that, the emerging artists also get these types of opportunities, right? And get to work alongside these very established artists who have been at it for decades, perhaps. So,
and it becomes kind of an incubator where everybody's sharing culture and skill, and, we're eating together and we're working together and we're, everything kind of in between. And yeah, it's really powerful to see, how these connections are made and where they tend to kind of splinter off to.
Well, I know from experience from watching you guys over all these years, how much love and heart you put into each of these campaigns. You're constantly on the road, you're constantly traveling, you're constantly working to make these, these activations be the very best thing they can be. So I applaud you for that. At this point for you guys, what would you say is still feels out of reach? Where do you want to go from here? What's sort of that next level? And I think also on top of that, what do you want your stakeholders, potential donors, et cetera, to really understand about what you guys are doing, or something that sometimes you're like, I'm not sure if people understand either a challenge or what you're out to do, but what's out of reach? What do you want people to understand about you guys?
One of the things that we are constantly working toward is, I think we want to become, somewhat synonymous when people think about ocean and art, or ocean and art and activism, right? We want people to think about PangeaSeed Foundation naturally. And I think all of the work that we are doing is heading in that direction. I think something that is just this constant, maybe uphill battle still is, as you kind of alluded to earlier, this idea that art isn't really quite valued yet as a change-making tool. I think it's more like viewed as this accessory to the movement rather than kind of a means in its own right. So I think that is like a continuing endeavor, and I think we'll just keep at it. We've got, some exciting new things in the works. Also around us doing the work that hasn't been done before around truly measuring what art's impact is and how can we maximize that change-making power. What do we need? What are the roadblocks?
I think when it's connected to science communication.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's kind of what we're working toward. And I hope that, with time, the authorities of the world, just like the world at large, will appreciate art more, not just as a nice to have, but as as an essential part of how we as humans connect with the world around us.
And I think we are seeing kind of like a change in values with the changing of the guard, like just over the past 10 years that, we've been doing this. Like we're seeing a lot of like, new businesses, and I think, kind of like individuals kind of like on the forefront of that. Art's pretty ingrained into kind of like, what they're interested in. It's a great tool for advertising, for marketing. So there is value in it. But like Akira was saying, like it can be challenging with the old guard because like a lot of times like people can't differentiate what like, a mural that is technically a fine art piece, what the difference is between that and graffiti. But even graffiti has an important place into this as well. I mean, like we work with artists that, have graffiti backgrounds. And it's an incredible communication tool in terms of its influence and how it can impact a community.
With that said, I guess let's talk about, where do people find you guys, and what do you want them when they come and find PangeaSeed? What do you hope that they get? Are they purchasing a print? Are they just being exposed to new ideas, meeting new artists? Is it all of the above, or kind of sharing the message that you're out? Where do you want people going to from all of your assets?
Yeah, I think you ticked a lot of the boxes there. When people do stumble across us or find us, I think probably the first thing they see is the visuals. That's usually kind of like what draws people in to learn a little bit more about what we do. So yeah. Again, I think art stirs the imagination. I mean, there's the expression an image is worth 1,000 words. So we totally subscribe to that. So yeah, I think when people do come across us, first thing they're going to see is imagery, and then if they decide to dig in a little bit deeper, they're going to find the purpose behind that imagery.
Yeah, and I think, depending who that person is who finds us, there's many different ways that they can engage. If you're just an art lover, if you just are a consumer of what we put out there, there's, you can follow us on social, stay up to date with what we do, learn through that medium. You can head to our website and our shop. You can purchase a print to support the work that we do. If you're an artist, we've got a form on our Seawalls website to express your interest. We also have a form on our Seawalls website that's a newer form that we're really excited about, where we're asking interested scientists to reach out. If you are a scientist and you're interested in sharing your knowledge, if you're interested in collaborating with creatives to get your research out there, that is another great way to get engaged as well.
Thank you guys for that. What would you offer here in the kind of the closing segment for up and coming nonprofit starters, change makers, aspiring change makers over the course of your 10, 12 years here of doing this? What advice to friends working together, husbands and wives, or just anybody who wants to make a change in the world? leave us with some advice. If you could give your, former self 10 years ago, what would you have told yourself to do to make sure that you do to be successful in this?
Oh, wow. You want to go first, or
You go.
okay? Like this one's a pretty easy one for me to answer, because like I didn't really have a lot of I guess mentorship when I was starting the organization. Like I really had to seek that out and approach individuals to get their feedback. And I think for me 10 years ago, I think the main thing would have been that it's okay to fail. It's okay, because it's important to experiment. Not all those experiments are going to be a success. Failure is going to be part of that, but the main thing is to learn from those failures. Analyze them. Take stock of what worked, what didn't, but don't wear it on your sleeve. So I've seen a lot of people try to start their own companies or organizations or businesses, and once things get tough, or if they have one kind of fail that they feel that they can't overcome, they just walk away from it. So I think learning how to fail is a big part of this. Especially when you're creating your own trail, or creating your own kind of blueprint.
I think my piece of advice would be to stick to what makes you get up in the morning. Stick to what you're passionate about and what you're good at. I think it's really easy to fall into kind of these traps of trends that are really fleeting. And I think that's just not really a long-lived way of going about things. I think the nonprofit work in general, it's a marathon. It's certainly not a sprint. So I think sticking to something that is going to continue to motivate you. I'm not saying that the whole ride is going to be really easy and that everything's going to be just smooth and no effort. But I think if you stick to what you love, stick to what you're good at, and if you approach that work with just like a lifelong learner's sort of perspective, I think you're setting yourself up for success in that way.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that as well. The other thing I was going to mention is like surrounding yourself around people that want to see you succeed. Being like it's easy to get into an echo chamber. But yeah, I think being around people that you support and you want to see succeed, and vice versa, I think helps a lot.
That's great advice, you guys. So good. I do have one other thing that I want to ask you as well. Kind of looking back, when you talk about your values, right, for the organization, I know are collaboration, intersectionality, community. When we look back at where you started and sort of halfway in between and where you're about to go now into the future, how have things evolved? What state do you think we're in? Do you think we're headed in the right direction? Do you feel more optimistic than ever? Do you feel like are things better now than they were 10 years ago? Do you feel like we've made a lot of progress? Are we moving in the right direction? Are we stagnant? Are we going backwards? Give me some perspective there. I'd love to hear it from you guys.
Yeah. Again, from my perspective, I feel we've made some incredible strides in different fields and different areas. I just feel that, it's like a perfect storm of stressors that are impacting the planet right now. Being realistic and thinking that we can change the course of a lot of those is really challenging at this point. But I'm optimistic. I think that's one of the reasons I'm able to continue to do what I do. Like if I think I just read the science and read the comments and stuff, I'd probably be in a very different headspace. But yeah, I mean, if the ship's going down, you've got two options. You can kind of just sit there and go down with it, or you can pick up a bucket and start throwing out water. And I choose the latter.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the name of your podcast is very fitting, right? I think there is a lot of good things happening. Is it enough? We shall see. But what does give me hope is that I think so many unsung heroes are getting some credit now, and the humanity as a whole in all of its kind of diverse expressions is coming to the table and is being given opportunities that weren't there even just a few years ago.
Yeah, there's such a massive interest, I think, with the younger generation around, purchasing with sustainability in mind, being an advocate, using your platform for change. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm seeing, especially with that younger generation and thinking outside of the box. Sustainability has become kind of trendy to some extent, so that's fantastic. So yeah, there's so much innovation out there right now. There's so much opportunity for change. I think it's just, like it's a matter of time.
I think it's the whole thing about sustainability becoming trendy is, it's a pitfall. You need to have your own kind of filters on to find out whether, what of that is greenwashing, what of that is genuine. I mean, that's the business you're in, Derek. And I think despite all of the negatives attached to that, I think it is becoming more mainstream. And I think that is part of the solution, is that
It's normalized.
the average person is exposed to the information, which I think that is becoming more mainstream, which is fantastic to see.
And there's accessibility to that,
So you're saying there's hope?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are so busy out saving the world, saving our world. Thank you for all the work that you have done, throughout the journey of PangeaSeed. I want everybody to go to your website immediately, go to your social media. You guys have built a great audience, a great social media presence. People will love all the things that you guys put out. It's so informative, and I think and it's beautiful. And that's what I think is exciting, right? You're going to get a dose of art, a dose of information and science, to your point. So you get all of those things. So you guys are doing an amazing job. What do people have to look forward to over the next few months or a year at PangeaSeed Foundation? Because I know there's so much going on. What do they have to look forward to next?
Yeah, to mark the 10-year anniversary of the Seawalls Arts for Oceans program, we're venturing out to create kind of its second evolution. And as part of that, there will also be exciting opportunities for emerging artists to actively apply to. Specifically, there will be a grant program that will be launching later in the year. So stay tuned for that. We will be posting that all over our website and social media. And yeah, exciting things ahead.
Yeah, it's something else like it could be interesting for people to check out is with last year being the 10-year anniversary for PangeaSeed Foundation, we spent a good 2 years developing this large format A4 10-pound coffee table book that dives deeper into our mission and what we do. And it's just an absolutely stunning piece of artwork and a really informative book. So that is available in limited edition, so people can pick that up too if they're interested.
And I can vouch for that as well. We've got the book. It is beautiful. And I remember when we received it, just sort of slowly going through it. The packaging is beautiful, every detail, and it is amazing. Everybody can find all of these things that you guys are talking about at PangeaSeed.org. That's the main website, or over on you'll find them on social media channels as well. So I think we've covered a lot, and I think we can go on, and we're going to have that part 2 when I come out and see you guys. That's going to be great. But anything else you want to leave us with? Is there anything else we didn't cover, or any last thoughts that you want to make sure that we plug in here?
I mean, I always think it's important to leave people with, the idea that the power is in their hands. It's so important that people realize that even the little decisions we make in our daily lives have a big impact. Every time you go to the store, you vote with your dollar. You're voting for death and destruction. Read a package. Most people, like especially in the States, have a phone in their hands where they could do a quick search about, what they're purchasing, who they're supporting, what they're voting for. I think just being more aware and in tune and active as a citizen on, planet Earth is incredibly important. And yeah, don't take that for granted.
Yeah, I think, we live in an age of just mass information. We certainly do not have an excuse when it comes to not being able to access information at this point anymore. I think the research is out there, the information is out there. There's fantastic individuals and groups doing the work to help people make sound decisions. So I think, no one has any excuse anymore to not do something, right? I think we're not saying that everyone needs to do everything. I'm certainly not doing everything I could do, but I'm doing the best I can. And I think if everyone does the best they can, I think we'd be heading in somewhat of the right direction.
Absolutely. I love that. Both of those. There's no excuses. Grab a bucket. The buckets are right over there. Go grab one, start helping out, because otherwise, we're all in this together. So you guys,
exactly.
such great words of advice. Thank you for sharing some of your story. I think we just barely got under the surface, because I know there's so much in there to talk about, but people can find you. We'll make sure we put all the links here for your websites, all of your assets and everything. Your videos are beautiful as well. So it's all in there. You guys go check it out. Tre and Akira, thank you so much for being on the show, and wish you all the best in your next Seawalls adventure. And I guess we'll see you out there on social media and on the World Wide Web and under the water.
Sounds good. Thank you for the opportunity, Derek.
Thanks so much for being part of this journey for so many years.
Thank you. What a great opportunity. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. This is a show produced by The Underswell and our School of Understanding. If you're interested in being a part of this movement and want to dive deeper into the art of understanding sustainability better so that you can do things better, be sure to visit us at theunderswell.com. We offer structured, easy-to-follow workshops, courses, and member resources to make sustainability a part of your career or lifestyle. Because remember, no matter what role you play a role, and we're here for you. Thanks again.